So today I'm going to explain MIDI nice and clearly with no fancy words or jargon, and I'm going to show you how you can use it to make your own music. And as a bonus, I'm going to show you a track that I'm working on at the moment and show you how MIDI really builds up a song. So don't go anywhere. Hi there guys, it's John Holt here with The Audio Journey, helping make music production accessible to all. So today I'm going to jump straight into the content and explain what MIDI does in really basic terms so that you can start to grasp exactly what it's all about. And I'm also going to show it to you in two different examples in different pieces of software in Logic Pro X and in Ableton Live, so it applies to both Mac and PC users. So what is MIDI? Now MIDI is a set of messages that we use to trigger sound, and it basically says play this note this hard for this long. I'll repeat that. MIDI is a set of messages that we use to trigger sound, and it says play this note this hard for this long. Now we can either put MIDI notes in by drawing them, as I'll demonstrate in the video, or you can use something called a MIDI keyboard, which looks a little something like this. And essentially what it does is sends MIDI notes into the computer via USB. Really, really simple. Now in the description below, I've linked up the best MIDI keyboards for certain budgets. So definitely check that out after the video if it's something that you want to invest in. So without further ado, let's jump into Logic Pro X, which is a Mac piece of software, and see how we use MIDI in there. Now, as I said, MIDI says to a virtual instrument, play this note this hard for this long, and I'm going to show you what that looks like inside Logic Pro X. I'm going to use this synth which comes with Logic, the ES2, and I'm going to go for maybe this sound. So in order to start putting MIDI in, we're going to 2-finger click and create an empty MIDI region. Just going to pop the loop on there so it keeps going around this MIDI region for us when we play. Now, when we tell the instrument what note to play, it's going to be one of the 128 notes that we see just here, all the way from -C2 all the way up to G8. When we tell the instrument how hard to play the note, that's controlled by velocity, which is another word for speed. The sound changes depending on how hard we hit the key. Now you can picture that if you pressed a piano key lightly, you get a different sound to if you hit it really hard, and it's the same idea here. And finally, when drawing a note in, we can control how long we want it to go on for. So let's draw some notes in to trigger this synthesizer. This menu here shows you what your command click tool is. So when you hold down command and click in this area, that's what you're going to be doing, and we're using the pencil tool. So let's draw in a little pattern of MIDI notes that are going to trigger the synthesizer. So let's listen to what that sounds like. I don't think it's going to sound amazing, but it will do the job and show you exactly what we've done here. Now what I'm going to do is put the notes in the second half of this clip to be a higher velocity, and that means that we're telling it to play the note harder. And we've raised the velocity just down here, and Logic shows you by colour what the velocity is set to. So if you listen to the difference between these two, that's the difference in velocity. These second red ones sounds like someone's hitting the keyboard much harder, whereas these ones it feels like they're pressing it a little bit lighter. Now what I'm going to do is select a different instrument to show you that if you make these MIDI notes longer, the sound is sustained. So if we draw in a short MIDI note, we get a short sound there. But if we draw in a long MIDI note, the sound carries on for as long as the note carries on. So that's how you can use MIDI to make synth sounds, but that's not all you can do with MIDI. You can also trigger something called a sampler. Now, a sampler is like a little storage device that holds audio files or samples. And what we want to be able to do is make the sampler play the sample or audio file that we want. And we do that using MIDI. Now let's go and have a look at a sampler inside Ableton, which is available on PC as well as Mac, so we can see how that sampler works. Now you can download a free trial of Ableton from the link in the description below to work along with this video if you like. The sampler that I'm going to be using today is called Drum Rack, and it can be used for anything, not just drums, but it does suit drums really quite well. So Ableton by default starts off with 2 MIDI tracks that you can see just here. And what I'm going to do is put a drum rack onto one of those MIDI tracks, which you can find under Drums and Drum Rack. Now here's the drum rack. The drum rack is the sampler, or the storage device, for these audio files that we're going to put in. And you can see, just the same as on the piano in Logic, you have all of the MIDI note values from -C2 all the way up to G8, which is 128 possibilities. Now what I'm going to do is take a sample or audio file, so MP3, WAV file. It can come from outside Ableton, it can come from anywhere. I'm just using the ones inside Ableton because it's a little bit easier. And all you have to do is drag and drop it into the sampler. And we've put that on the note C3. What we need to do now to be able to put some MIDI in is make a MIDI clip, just like we did in Logic. And we do that by double clicking on an empty clip slot. If you want to find out a little bit more how Ableton works, I'll link that up on the interactive YouTube card just up here. Now what we want to do down here is click Fold, which shows you the whole piano. And the note that we put that audio file on was C3. So if we draw some notes in on the track C3, we should hear that audio file. Now the way that we do that in Ableton is we use the pencil tool just up here, and the keyboard shortcut for that is B for Bravo. Now this isn't going to sound amazing, but what it does is it shows you how we're triggering that audio file using MIDI. And there we go. So that's all very well, but how would you actually use that in a song? What I'm going to do is show you a track that I'm working on at the moment and show you how I use MIDI. Now it's a tech house track and it takes influence from the likes of Bontan, Patrick Topping and Josh Butler. Now to make the drums in this song, I've used MIDI. So what I've done for each individual drum is got a sampler that's full of audio samples of that drum. So this sampler is full of kick drum samples. And what I've done is picked the kick that I want, which was this one, and drawn in the MIDI pattern. So it sounds like that. Next I added a clap. So I got a sampler that was full of clap audio files. And I picked this one and put the pattern in as well. Next I did the same for the hi-hats. So I got a sampler that was full of hi-hats. And I chose this one and drew the pattern in. So you can see how that's starting to build up. What I also did is I used a synthesizer to write the bass line and triggered that using MIDI. So here's what it sounds like on its own, and you probably won't hear this all that well if you're not using headphones or speakers. And what that's doing is triggering this synthesizer, which sounds like this. And it's playing the pattern that I've put in there. So here's what it sounds like with the whole track. And there we go, that's an example of how I'm using MIDI to make my own music. Now I hope you found this explanation of MIDI useful, and if you enjoyed the video then please leave a like, it would mean a lot to me. And if you want to see more tutorials of this nature, then please consider subscribing, it would again really mean a lot to me. Now if you do have any questions about anything that we covered in this video, then feel free to leave a comment or get in touch via the links below, and I will get back to you with an answer and a little bit more help. And if you're fairly new to all of this, then I've made a video series called the 7 Key Elements of Music Production that's all up on YouTube. I'll link it up in the description below. Definitely go and check that out. It gives you a really good structured understanding of the basics. Now I've been John Holt with The Audio Journey, helping make music production accessible to all. I hope to see you again soon. Take care.